What moments from your past have shaped the path leading to who you are now and the passions that drive you today?
Wow, I love the question. And I would say I could probably name like three big things, but I'll pick the more recent one, more recent in terms of the length of my time of being on Earth. But I was actually in the middle of an MBA program with the intention of going into government service, kind of all planned out. And my dear friend from like elementary school, like I know him since kindergarten, was murdered. He was in a bar fight. He won every fight he was ever in, but they went to the street and got a gun from his car and killed him. And that really caused me to have a dark night of the soul. And then a month later, a professor of mine in the MBA program committed suicide. So it was like kind of a double whammy. And the dark night of the soul for me was like a lot of deep self-reflection. Like, okay, is this really the path that I want to be on? And for anyone who knows of my path actually started when I was a little kid, around age 9. My first 3 books I read were Zen Mind, No Mind by Daisetsu Suzuki, Zen and the Martial Arts, and the book on yoga. And I was 9. Do I really know what I was reading and understanding it? Probably not. Would I read it today and still understand it? Probably not. But my path as a young person was kind of in the spiritual, human potential, human optimization space. But that was a very private interest. But once the murder of my friend occurred and the suicide of my teacher, I started really reflecting. I was like, what do I really want to do? And I really wanted to take all this knowledge that I had been building personally, trying to go into the education space and learn to be a therapist or something along those lines, to really take what I learned that was helpful for me growing up as a person and help other people. And I realized that the MBA program wasn't it for me. So, I left the program and then ended up going to California and doing all my graduate work in transpersonal counseling psychology, and then postgraduate training in somatic psychology. Became a therapist, and for the last, God, almost 30 years in this therapeutic space, but as a coach since 2000. So I'd say that's kind of one formative experience that shaped where I am today.
So, 9 years old, you read this book. How did that book really impact you? I guess reflecting on the time, if you remember, like when you were 9 years old, like how did that shape before and after, like
Yeah,
your
yeah,
worldview?
yeah. I like that. So I have to contextualize this. At age 9, I was also in therapy, and I can tell you a funny story about a psychiatrist, but I was ended up working with a psychotherapist, and she's the one who really encouraged me she taught me meditation, she taught me biofeedback, she taught me guided imagery, she encouraged the martial arts, I got into the martial arts. So I would say it's kind of in that context of then exploring Eastern spiritual systems like Zen and yoga that this comes all about. And for me at the time, like I wouldn't have been able to articulate what I'm about to say now, but there's kind of an underlying thing. It's like, how do I manage myself? All the stuff that was happening to me as a little kid, all the challenges I was facing. I didn't know how to handle all the anxiety that was in my human system. And the meditation, the guided imagery, the biofeedback, all kind of help support like the management of all that stuff for me. And I would say Zen and yoga are two traditions that their intent is not psychological, their intent is spiritual, but they're steps along the way. And steps along the way are really about managing internal states, towards higher ends. Like each tradition is different. But so I would say like they supported my interest in ultimately what I would call self-mastery. At the time I was calling it like I just want to feel better inside myself, whatever. I need to learn how to manage what's going on inside myself. Yeah.
How old were you when these traumatic events happened? Or, well, first off, were they traumatic to you in the meantime? And how did you navigate that at the time of these events happening?
Well, I'll start with the latter one first, the one I mentioned with the murder of my friend, and the suicide of my teacher. Um, I handled it as best as I could. Like, yeah, I didn't go into any kind of, I was probably what, 20, 21, 22, somewhere in the very, very early 20s. I didn't go into therapy, but I just got into a really depressed state for months. And, actually it's interesting because the woman who eventually became my wife, we're no longer together, but we were dating at the time. And I can recall, her name is Amy, and I can recall a conversation with her. It was like, I need a friend now. I don't need a girlfriend, if that makes sense. And she ended up being a real good friend to help kind of process this stuff. So I never kind of went therapeutically with it, but just having someone to talk to about how hard this was. And then I have really supportive parents. So when I said to them, MBA, hey, I'm doing fine. I'll have like a 3, 6, 7, 8 average. I was doing fine. I'm like, I have no interest in this stuff. What's of interest to me is all these alternative psychologies that I'm interested in. And they gave me full support. I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to go explore, that's cool. There's a couple bumps in the night around that, but that was like, the support I had with family, and at the time my girlfriend, who became my wife, was really helpful. Yeah, helped me get through that all.
And then you started pursuing your therapy training.
Yeah. So I did my graduate work at John F. Kennedy University, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I did it was a master's degree in transpersonal counseling psychology. So we had to study all the conventional schools of psychology because you got to get licensed by the state of California. So you have to know the basics. So we studied everything. But my specialization at JFK was transpersonal. And then I did postgraduate. I did about almost a year and a half, maybe close to 2 years, but a year and a half of postgraduate studies at CIS, the California Institute for Clinical Studies, both in their somatics program, but I also did a couple of classes with Dr. Stan Groff, LSD researcher, who's well known in that space too.
So while you were pursuing this, I guess what is transpersonal? Because I don't even know what that is. Yeah, what is that?
So yeah, you can just look at the word trans. Trans means through and beyond the personal. So we all have personalities, masks that we wear. It's an intersection of our own psychology and our culture and our family of origin and religion, nationality, ethnicity kind of creates how we show up in the world. But those are masks we wear just for survival purposes. We learn how to survive by engaging the world in certain ways, which is fine. That's just what we do. And transpersonal psychology is basically the recognition that those masks we wear are not really who we are. There's greater depth to who we are and greater capacities. And not only greater capacities in the sense like what we're capable of doing on a day-to-day basis, but like if you're actually in touch with your true nature and live more authentically from that true nature, you're less driven by these old programs, the ones I just referred to, like these masks and these defense structures we create that are in the system, like in the body-mind system. So transpersonal psychology one way to think about it, it looks at the various religious systems globally, historically, and then all the religious systems have spiritual practices, whether it's meditation or prayer or various yogic breathing practices, breath work, psychedelics, sacred medicine, things along those lines. Sensory deprivation, there's some pain things that certain traditions use to induce non-ordinary states. So what we learned is like these different practices and how they can induce non-ordinary states. These should be called altered states, now they're called non-ordinary states. And in non-ordinary states, you begin to, a few things, recognize that you're limitless, like you're a lot more than you think you are in this skin encapsulated ego that I guess Alan Watts might call you, refer to you back in the day. And then our access to the information that's available to us is so much more than we can imagine with our 5 senses. And these are a result of these practices. They're disciplines, of course you could take a LSD or a psilocybin or an ayahuasca one time and have an amazing experience, but mind-opening, expanding experience. But like these are practices that are entrenched in cultures that require work. It's not just like, and we're both in Austin, and I like to joke, someone does a weekend workshop and now they're a shaman. It's like, it doesn't really work that way. And psychedelics are great, but they're tools that need to be contextualized in larger practices. So yeah, that's kind of the quick and dirty, I would say, on transpersonal psychology.
So you studied that, and then you became a marriage and family therapist right after, or what was right after that?
I did. So then I went to CIS. To study somatic psychology, and in that, so I had to do my internships, so like 3,000 clinical hours, couples, families, individuals. So I was doing all that while I was also going to graduate school, postgraduate school at CIS. Then I got licensed, and I practiced under my license for a while. realize that license realize that as a psychotherapist, there's a lot of
Yeah.
limitations on what you're capable of doing legally. And I'm like,
Mm.
and plus insurance, and I ran into some really trouble with insurance companies that wanted way too much information on my clients that I just refused to give. And
Uh,
I'm like, I don't want to work inside the system. So I kept my license. I'm still licensed, but I practice as a coach since 2000 because there's no oversight board. There's no like limitations. I'm
like
an ethical
your
person, but
like
I'm like,
like your self practice kind of.
what do you mean?
Kind of like a self practice, like a business.
Well, yeah. So I do coaching and education. I don't do therapy anymore. So if someone comes in with
Mm,
like a mental illness issue, I don't address that. Although
you can't,
I'm
yeah.
I'm capable of doing it through my education, but I don't work on that. I will refer you out. If you
Because
want to
the
do personal
license,
growth and
yeah.
development and stuff, then I can do that as a coach. Yeah, but I don't work on mental illness, psychiatric disorders, depression, schizophrenia. I don't. I did years ago, but not
Yeah.
anymore.
I did want to ask you, what was the most common reasons people came to you as both a marriage counselor and a family therapist?
Yeah, so I'll make distinctions because back in
Mm,
the day when I was practicing as a psychotherapist in emergent family therapy, it was first many years into my practice. So
mm,
the joke is if a bear came into your practice, you'd see him, right? But over time, you specialize. You're
yeah.
like, oh, this is the kind of clientele I want to work with, and these are the kind of issues I want to
Uh,
work with. So that literally did change over the decades till today. But generally speaking, so for couples that have come to me, a lot of it is communication issues. Like they're just missing each other. There's a lot of mind reading, which is not an effective way of engaging
that's
another
the
human
worst.
being. Yeah, yeah. So like, fear of sharing what's actually going on inside this person, fear of retribution or judgment or whatever happens to be, and then inability to communicate clearly what their wants, needs, and desires might be, and be able to listen to the
Mm,
other person's wants, needs, and desires, and experience without getting like either judgmental or
triggered.
defensive or triggered. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of in the early time as in the marriage and family space for sure.
And then you decided to stop doing that,
Yeah,
and now you're just a full on coach.
just a coach, and there's three classes of groups of people that I work with. So
Mm,
I have a program I work with individuals, and I've created what's called Emergent Human, which is a very comprehensive human development program. Work physiologically, psychologically, environmentally, and socially with individual clients. I also do work with couples, and I love working with couples as well. And then I also run groups. So I'm actually leading a group
mm.
with a colleague of mine, JC Glick, and it's a men's group on Resilience 2.0, taking men to the next level of what resilience could mean for them. Yeah, so I do individuals, couples, and I run groups.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, yeah, oh, very much so. And I love my clients. Like I have some really good clients who, really want to put in the work and do, grow and evolve, adapt, and learn.
Especially for men, which is what I wanted to talk about, because you said we as humans should remove the armor.
Hmm.
So first, what is the armor? And then second, how can we, as I guess both men and women, but I think
Yeah,
it's more serious for men to express their vulnerable side.
yeah. So think about armor. One way of considering armor is muscle and fascia. So when we're under threat as a little person, little kid, real perceived threat, we don't have the mental capacity or the size to, head on deal that like, no, father, I'm not going to take it. Let's have this conversation. Or no, mother. It's like, someone's yelling at you or whatever happens in the dynamic between you and your caregiver, your family, your parent. And one of the reactions that can take place is you get tight out of fear, right? So the muscles actually contract, the fascia actually contracts. And the benefit of that in that very moment is if you're contracted, like for instance, up here in the chest area, you're less likely to breathe. Like you're literally shutting down your breathing mechanism. You're not going to pass out because you're still breathing, but you're breathing really lightly. The benefit of that is you don't feel. This is actually like you contract here, and you similarly hold your breath, and it gets tight, you're actually repressing the emotions, like fear or anger or sadness, whatever it happens to be that you're not supposed to feel, and you contract your muscles against it and hold it down, which is great when you're 5 or 7. It's not great, but it's a useful defense mechanism against a real perceived bigger threat than you, right? Because you can't argue with your dad if you're 5 and he's a big dude, or your mom, whatever it is, right? Or if there's any kind of physical abuse or mental abuse or emotional abuse or sexual abuse, whatever it is, we contract against it. So we walk around like that. Like that is our new natural state is kind of contracted. And it's not necessarily 24/7, but like someone says something to you, like your partner or your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever it is, and it's like you use the word trigger, and it triggers and brings back memories, and your kind of reaction is like, oh, and it might be an overblown reaction to the situation at hand, but you get this contraction. So that's the armor. The armor is actually literally physically the contraction of the muscle and the fascia, which has a whole bunch of other effects we can get into. And one of the ideas is like, okay, we need to deconstruct that armor because you don't need it anymore. You're no longer 5. You're not under the same kind of threat. You're an adult, male or female. You're hopefully more than capable of handling whatever the situation is. And if you're not, cool, let's build the inner resources so you can. So it's not like, let's just strip your armor and like leave you bare. Like, no, okay. As we deconstruct the armor and create more what I would call freedom or responsibility as opposed to reaction, you also want to build the inner resources because maybe they don't. Maybe they're incapable, like mentally, emotionally, energetically, and spiritually to actually deal with the situation. So they need a defense mechanism. Cool, I get that. But ultimately for a client, I'm like, let's deconstruct this, give you the freedom and then the inner capacity to deal with whatever life is throwing your way. So that's what I mean by the kind of the armor.
Yeah, that's what happens when we start to walk on eggshells around people.
Yep.
And a certain word or even certain places can trigger you into this state.
Yeah, exactly. Perfectly said.
So how do we, I guess, strip that, and then how do we practice being more vulnerable every day?
Yeah, great question. So and it's 2 different things. Like I said, we need to build the inner resources, but we'll just stick with the deconstructing the armor. And let me put the armor in context in the whole human system, because it's not just like, oh, my fascia, my muscles get tight. There's a thinking pattern, there's a breathing pattern, there's like this whole gestalt that occurs that you call your trigger, right? So when I work with a client, I want them to understand and experience and know at a really deep level how they do what they do, not just why. Oh, when I was 5, my mother did this, or 7, my father did this, or my uncle. The why is interesting, but it doesn't change the dynamic. Like how do you do your trigger? Like literally. And we'll spend a lot of time like, okay, I want them to be aware of like what muscles actually contract. What's the breathing pattern? What's the thoughts? Do they have imagery? Do they hear anything? Are there smells? What was the various senses? Is there a movement pattern that emerges? Some people might step backwards because they're afraid. Some people get aggressive. Like this literally could be a movement pattern. So I get them to understand that whole gestalt at a really subtle level. And then we find our way in to the various things I just said. So for instance, okay, we know that the breathing pattern is so-and-so and you're triggered. Let's teach you how to create a different breathing pattern. Well, how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need to relax those muscles that get tight in the fascia. So there's exercises I will take clients through to gain conscious control over those muscles. So it's no longer reactive, it's responsive. So I don't have to and then stop my breathing. So I can actually, and it's not immediate. Yeah. I mean, that's not true. On rare occasions, the person shifts. That's awesome. But these are practices that take time, which is pretty anti-American because people like to put time and effort into stuff. Yeah. But so, you do these practices where you begin to relax those muscles and gain conscious control. And then you play around with the breath. Like, okay, I'm relaxed. I can bring my shoulders down. I can choose a new breathing pattern. Cool. And while we're doing that, what's the script? What's the voice? Who's the voice? That's always an interesting question. The tone, the volume, the words that are used, become aware of that. And let's replace that in the moment with something different. Now, it's important, and I would do this too, is like, who's the voice? Where'd the voice come from? Let's explore that, because it might not even be your voice. It might be, you might have like incarnated your father's voice inside your head and then became your voice. We can explore all that stuff too. But ultimately, it's like, okay, we're changing the breathing, we're changing the muscles, the fascia, we're changing the breathing pattern. Let's change the thinking. What's the new
Mm,
script that would allow you to engage in whatever the situation is in a healthier way? Part of this is also too, and this goes exactly what you just said. It's like, okay, awareness. Like, what am I blocking against? Oh, that's anger. Okay. And what I will have clients do is like while they're doing all these other things, like the changing the scripts and the breath and the posture and the muscle tone, is like, okay, pretend like you don't know what anger is. Like we can name it. It's anger, it's grief, it's sadness, it's shame, it's guilt. Cool. But I find that some people have a tendency to use words to dismiss their experience. So I'd say, okay, anger. Let's pretend like we don't know what that means. What's your experience of anger? How do you know that you're angry? And then they can share that. And it's fascinating, Thomas. You'll appreciate this. Like some people have no idea. Like I don't know. Like I don't know how I'm angry. I don't know how I know I'm angry. I'm just angry. Like there's something going on physiologically in your system that if you pay attention to, you'll become aware of it. So people start becoming aware of it. Oh, this is happening in my gut and tightness in my jaw. Whatever. Heartbeat gets faster. All these various things. So like start being aware, like almost preconceptually of the experience, which what you might call anger, grief, sadness, joy, bliss. And I want to add in joy, bliss, happiness too, because there's some people who are taught in their family of origins, hey, we're not sad, we're not angry, but hey, you can't be happy either. You can't be joyful. There's nothing to be happy about. This world sucks. There's messages that we get. So it's not just quote unquote the negative emotions. So like I teach people how just to be aware of what's happening in their system, what we would call emotions. So we're deconstructing their defensive system while also helping them become aware of what's happening and sitting with that as long as they can without getting distracted. Like we have a tendency like, oh, I can jump on my phone and check out Instagram or porn or Netflix or eating or drugs or like, I don't like what's going on inside of me. So I'm going to distract myself with things. Okay, we do that. We're human beings. And can you wait 5 minutes before you distract yourself? And the next time, can you wait 6 minutes? So, the resilience for me is like being able to sit uncomfortably in your own experience for longer periods of time. So I'll stop there because there's a lot there.
I think it's
Yeah.
easier to. I think it's easier to start instead of stop the bad habits. Like I think it's easier to just not pick up your phone than to pick up your phone and try to stop. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I try to do everything I can productive wise before I even do any of that because
Oh, it's like
it's
first
like
thing in the
a
morning.
yeah, it's
Oh, nice.
like I don't even yeah, I try not to like I think you have to place limits on ourselves. I think that's what it is. Because when we don't place limits on ourselves, especially I don't know if there's any entrepreneurs listening or anyone who has or work from home, that's another big one where you pretty much have to limit yourself. But then in those limits you get I guess liberated from certain bad habits.
Well, like Jocko Willink would say, discipline equals freedom. I mean, you just nailed it.
Hmm.
Nailed it. And, and I completely agree with you. And our culture seems to lack discipline, generally speaking. And it's not really taught. And I actually believe we're unlimited, but I think
Hmm.
boundaries and guideposts are helpful for the individual so we can stay front side focused and, whatever our goals are in
Yeah,
our particular
that's
life.
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that you do that in the morning, man. That's good. Good
I
on you.
feel like you have to. I try to practice the eat the frog mentality.
Say more about that.
Have you heard of that?
No. Uh-uh.
Eat the frog,
Yeah.
where basically you whatever tasks you have to do, get them done. Like the hardest task, whatever
Okay.
the hardest tasks are, or the task that you're dreading the most, or whatever task that you feel like would take up the most time, maybe
Okay.
any task like that. That's the frog. Eat the frog
Okay.
first.
All right. I like that.
Yeah. So I try to practice that because if I pick up my phone, I already messed up. Now it's gonna take longer for me to get back into the flow
Yeah.
of because I get into like a flow mode where I'm just like, I'll work for like an hour to 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours straight, and I'll be good. But I notice if I take a break to do anything other than like walking or like getting some water or something, yeah, it'll distract me for like it'll get me out of the flow mode, and
Yeah.
it'll take longer to get back into it.
So you'll appreciate this. In my work with individuals, I mentioned I have a 4-pillar program: physiological, psychological,
Mm,
environmental, and social. And the environmental piece is what you just nailed. Like, how do we modify your environment to support new habits
mm,
and or remove? Like, it's either via negativa, let's remove things, or add things in. And like, if, I like to joke, like, hey, if someone's saying to me, they're like, "Hey, I'm trying to stay off sugar." Like, cool.
mm.
Let's go walk around your office, and they have a bowl of M&Ms sitting in front of them. I'm like, well, you
Yeah.
can spend like your willpower points trying not to eat the M&Ms in front of you all day, which is a waste of willpower points and it's
Yeah.
very distracting. Or you can just remove the M&Ms from your desk, So there's things we can do to remove or add things to support these kind of behaviors that you're talking about. In this case, like, hey, don't walk with your phone all the
Yeah.
time.
Well, I like to
Yeah.
like when I'm working, I don't like to even have my phone like in
Okay.
eyes view. I like to like put it
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the other
Good on you,
room.
man. Yeah, yeah. That's smart.
But I did want to ask you in regards to emotions, what role do you think, I guess, negative emotions play? And do you think anger and frustration serves any sort of purpose for us?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of, and I'll do this verbally just because people understand negative versus positive emotions, but I'm not really a big fan of labeling them that way. Emotions are information, and maybe there's some emotions we prefer over others. Cool, I get that. Or a blessed state, or joy and happiness, than anger and frustrated. But you know, and I would say, if you feel whatever it is in its totality, it provides you valuable information. If you don't feel it, then you're going to have secondary health consequences, either psychological health consequences, or literally physical health consequences of contracting against feeling certain things. Okay. And I would say, if you take it seriously as information, it's valuable information, but it's not the gospel. It's a feeling, you know? So like, take it, look at it, analyze it. Once you've felt it, like, don't just go right to the mind. And like, what information does it tell you about how you're living, how you're engaging another person, how you feel about certain things, whatever it is. Like, so for instance, anger could help point you to lack of boundaries, or lack of clarity around your boundaries, or the fact that someone crossed your boundaries and you didn't do something about it. So that's valuable information. Okay, maybe I need to be more clear on my boundaries. Maybe I need to figure out what my boundaries are. Maybe I need to in an effective way articulate my boundaries to another person and protect myself against breaking of my boundaries. Whatever that means. Like, we can go down a million different rabbit holes with that one. Like, yeah, that can be valuable information. Cool. If you pretend like it's not there, it doesn't really help you. So like, if you walk around road raging all the time, I would say, yeah, that's chronic experiences around a particular emotion. Not helpful. That's not good. But yeah, I wouldn't deny any particular one emotion for sure.
I think road raging is the worst.
Yeah.
I just when it comes to anger, I try to process it very very quickly because I get frustrated all the time. I have kids. I have a
Yeah.
ex that baby mama, have to deal with her. Oh, and I notice I get triggered all the time, but I think I really try to process it very quickly, and mentally say like, okay, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling whatever, I have to sort this out. I can't just, because before I used to just feel it and like hold on, like do exactly what you were saying, like just
Mm.
hold on to it and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
dismiss it. And I would be the type of person that would dismiss it so long and try to keep level headed and like then explode.
Explode. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I learned the hard way that you have to process them whatever way, like breathing, going
Yep.
for like for me, breathing, breath work, and walks and exercise, like lifting
Nice.
heavy weights.
Nice.
Those are my like go-to
Mhm.
emotional process states.
Yeah. Which is actually perfect because, like, if I was working with you as a client, I would suggest one of the three options, and we can do all three options or two of the three options, and you've nailed two of them. It's like, okay, how do
Mm.
you first of all allow the experience to occur so you're aware of it, you're not contracting against it, repressing it. Cool. And then what do you do with it? Like, okay, how do you manage that? Okay, that's very we're not taught how to manage emotions. We're taught either repressing them, or some people overly express them. But like, how do you actually manage them once you're aware of them? So, and you got your breath work. Hey, the breath work is a great way of managing it. And or it's too much energy. Let's use the energy for other purposes, like working out. So
No,
that's
that's
awesome.
exactly
Yeah.
my thought process, especially like with road rage or any type of anger. When I feel like it's so exhausting. I mean, it takes up so much of our energy, which is why I have like empathy and compassion for people who are just grumpy, like grumps, like just like it's like, man, it
Yes.
takes so much of your energy to hold on to
Yeah.
whatever you're
Yeah.
holding on to.
Yeah.
Imagine if you let that go or processed it. I feel like you'd be like liberated. You'd have like people who walk around as grumps or whatever, road raging everywhere they go. I think they're carrying like this weight of anger, and to me, whenever I feel it, I just get this feeling of exhaustion.
Yep. Yep.
It's like yes, I feel this emotion, I feel frustrated, but it's exhausting, it's tiring to hold on to this. So that's why I try to immediately let it go. Like even this morning I was driving my kids to school, and there's this intersection that's always busy, and people for some reason they try to like piggyback off of like the stop signs. Like they'll stop, and then when somebody goes, they'll try to go with them
Oh
at the
my
same
God.
time. So like there'll be like
Okay.
two cars at the
Yeah.
same
Yeah. Yeah.
time
Uh huh.
instead of one. That's
Uh
what they tried to do. Like it was clearly my turn. I had stopped. This car went, and then I was about to go, and the car was trying to piggyback with them. So
That's a
that
new
was a
one for
moment
me.
of road rage,
Yeah.
but we both just kind of stopped, and they stopped completely, and then I went. But I was just like what the heck?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting too, because like I mentioned, there's three things that I might work with you on. One is like, hey, awareness and self-management of internal states. Cool. And it sounds like you got that going on really well. The other one is like, ooh, can you change the situation? Sometimes you can. In this case, you can't. Like, you can't change the fact that they're piggybacking
Yeah.
cars, right? But there's some situations you have some power over it. You can change the situation and change the dynamics. Cool. Or the relationship with an individual person or a group of people. Not always, but sometimes. And then the mindset. What mindset are you going into in this experience? Which leads then to like have this reaction. And if it's okay with you, I'll give you an example of a client of mine that I thought was really
Yeah.
interesting when it changed his mindset. So I had a client who had traveled 3 weeks out of 4 for work. He was a fundraiser. He's an executive director, but he's fundraising all the time. And after years and years into this, he was like burnt out. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sick of traveling all the time, staying in hotels and stuff. And so we're working together, and I was like, and he has to do it. I mean, he doesn't have to quit his job, but that's part of his job. He likes his job. So I'm like, okay, let's think about your mindset. And one of the things I work with him on is an adventure mindset. So instead of looking at this as dread, look at this as an adventure. What new things can you do while you're in this new town? How can you engage this potential donor in a different way? What can you do while you're there for a short period of time to like stretch yourself and grow and learn new things? So what he would start doing is, it's kind of cool, a few different things. On occasion, you go a little bit earlier. So you had time to go like check out the sites if you wanted to, but that's not always possible. But like instead of like, a 5-course dinner at this fancy restaurant, he took some of the donors on walks in parks. He's like, it's so nice here. Like, this is a beautiful park. Let's go for a walk. And as you already said, like walking, right? Walking, you mentioned walking. Walking is such a huge thing, especially in relationships. To change the dynamics, people relax. You're in nature. You have the whole Japanese forest bathing concept going on there, and that changed his dynamic. It ends more fun for him. And then he also, one of the other times, he like took one of his potential donors to yoga. let's do a yoga class, and then we can talk after yoga. And so everyone's relaxed and calm and cool and centered. But it ultimately doesn't matter what he decided to do. Although I think those are cool examples. He just changed his mindset, and he started looking forward to it. It wasn't like a dread, like but like here's an adventure, and I can like experiment and try new things. So I think it can be helpful to also not only manage internal state, but change the mindset as you approach situations and look at it slightly differently, or multiple different ways of looking at it differently, not just one necessarily.
Yeah, it's just a matter of a perspective switch.
Yeah.
It's like the person that's a cashier and they hate being a cashier, and you get to the checkout and you could tell that they're just dreading it, versus the cashier that gives you compliments or is just uplifting and energetic, and like you get a certain energy in the interaction between the two. And I think those two interactions is just a different perspective that they have.
I had the greatest example. Literally, I love that you brought this up. I just got back to Austin. I was in DC Metro, and flying back to Austin, I flew to Alabama or one of the southern states, and I was in the airport waiting for the next flight, and I went to a coffee shop, and there's an African American woman behind the counter, and she was singing, and she was calling her baby, and like she was just so much fun. And everyone in line was just lighting up because she was so playful, and this nice feedback loop as opposed to a grumpy, person. And it was so different than if she just had been like, oh, I don't want to be here and I hate this fucking job.
Yeah.
And it was so cool.
It's like that perspective can also, that perspective switch can also spread to other people, which can be good.
Very much so. Yeah.
So do you consider yourself an emergent human?
So I can explain the name if you'd like.
Yeah. What does that mean?
My basic concept is that there's no final stage of development. Like life will call out different capacities and character traits and skills and knowledge and wisdom out of us, depending if you keep engaging life. Like there's always an opportunity to learn and grow, evolve, and adapt.
Yeah.
So there's emerging qualities that can emerge. So if you operate from that, it's like the adventure mindset. Like, ooh, what can I get into today? And it doesn't mean like, oh, everything's gonna be like light and flowers and unicorns. Like even the hard stuff, it can be like, but you can approach it like, okay, here's an opportunity. This effing sucks, and I'm still gonna use it as an opportunity to learn, grow, adapt, and evolve. Awesome. So the emerging concept is that it's like, oh, let's have that as our kind of modus operandi in life.
You use Latin a lot.
Oh, for the like transpersonal and
okay. Yeah. Oh, that's just from your like teachings and stuff.
Well, transpersonal psychology was a school of psychology created in the '60s. I can't take any credit for it. So I'm, and the emerging concept, having studied some, in the sciences about emergent qualities that emerge when a new complex system reaches to its next level. It's always stuck with me. It's like, well, that's really fascinating. So like I like to take, I like to take these concepts and apply them to what I see in life with us as human beings.
A concept, I don't know if it's Latin or Roman, but a concept that I practice a lot. You probably heard of it, Memento Mori. What are your thoughts on that? I practice that a lot.
Right here, man. See, right here.
Oh man.
Yeah. For you, let me ask you, why is that important for you? Then I'll share.
For me.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's important to meditate on because it's kind of a guide for me. It's kind of a reminder that I need to just live life and try new things and try things that bring me more joy and fulfillment and peace in life, and also a reminder exactly like the emotions thing, like we're all gonna die one day, so why do I want to die like an angry old man,
Mm-hmm.
or do I want to just see these emotions as temporary and it's not the bigger picture. So reminding myself of Memento Mori, it's like it gives me the bigger picture, especially for my goals as well. Like for example, this podcast is a side hustle to me that I
Okay.
eventually want to do full time, make money from it, all the
Nice.
things, like have a
Yeah, yeah.
studio, whatever. And I think meditating on Memento Mori allows me to see the bigger picture. Like, this is a life thing. It's not a 1 month thing, 1 day thing, 1 year thing. It's an entire life thing. So why not try to do it while I'm alive?
I love that. And my answer partially to your question is like, the question I like to ask is, how shall we live? You know, and that the coin that I shared with you is leads me into a deep inquiry. It's like, when I'm at the gates talking to St. Peter's or whatever, like I don't know what happens when you die, but like you're there and I'm having a conversation with St. Peter or God or whoever, and I look back and reflect on my life. I want to make sure that I live my life to its fullest. You know, I was as caring, compassionate, and loving as I could be. I was as strong as I could be. All the character traits. I was as courageous as I could be. All the character traits are important to me. I lived with integrity and alignment and dot, 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 dot. And so like every morning I literally will wake up and I have this on my board over here. It's like, what are the character traits that are important to me, and am I embodying them this day? And I look at them and I do this whole practice, and at the end of the day I reflect, how was I compassionate? Was I loving? Was I strong? Was I courageous? And I don't use it to beat myself up. So I'm like, lessons learned. Okay, my integrity was a little bit off, or I wasn't as strong as I could have been, or whatever the story was for that day. How can I course correct? Like 1% better every day type of thing. But it gives me that the whole concept of like, I'm going to die. Let's retrospect backwards and make sure I live as fully as possible. Was one of the things that drives me. My habits, really, some of the rituals that I do, AM rituals, as I just mentioned to you.
I think that practice also keeps you aligned as well.
Yeah.
It's like, am I aligned with my values and my purpose in life?
Yeah.
I think that's a very good practice to have.
Yes, completely agree.
So what is human resilience? Why is human resilience important? And how can we, whoever's listening, rise to the challenge of life?
Great question. So let me contextualize it. Resilience 1.0 versus 2.0. J.C. Glick and I, as a former Army Ranger, worked in the special operations space for forever, multiple combat tours. He and I launched a Resilience Optimized men's group. We're in our second month now. And our basic intention is Resilience 1.0 is great. Like, I can carry heavy things long distances. I can run 100 miles before breakfast like a David Goggins. Whatever the fit, like I can get up at 4 o'clock in the morning like Jocko and lift weights. All those things are great. Like, disciplines and practices which make you physically strong and capable. Awesome. Our basic intention is, yes, that's like 1.0. 2.0 is like, how can I be resilient in my system? So when things are happening inside of me, I don't have to go get distracted. I don't have to use the drugs, the alcohol, the porn, my Instagram, whatever it is. I can literally sit with and be resilient with whatever's arising in my system. I can do the same thing with my spouse. Like, she is having her, whatever's going on for her, it's a messy day for her. This is what we teach our guys in our program. And like, okay, your inclination is to fix her because you feel uncomfortable because she's feeling uncomfortable. What if you just held the space for her? I mean, perhaps she wants some solutions to her problems. You can always ask her, hey, you want some help solving this? Many women would say, no, I just want you to listen, right? But the guy has to fix it. So it's like, and there might be on occasion like, hey, you eventually have the conversation, let's just solve this as a problem. But in the short run, it's like, I just want to hold the space for you while you sit with whatever's going on inside your system. And it's not just with your spouse, it's your kids too, because especially kids, they're all over the place. Like, how do I hold the space for them to be kids? you know. And then we live in a VUCA world, you know, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous. Like there's so many shifts going on, financial systems and politics and economics and socially. Like there's all this stuff that's going on, and it's a challenge. So how do I hold the space? How do I stay like centered, calm, cool, really powerful, and you know, but from a loving, caring place, not like in the midst of all this chaos, so I can act and have the best impact possible in whatever my community needs, my family needs, my workmates needs, my country needs, the world needs, you know, whatever, I mean, whatever the scale is, but like I'm capable of handling these things. That's one way to think about resilience. And then, and this literally came up 2 nights ago in our men's group, is like resilience is also interpersonal. And it's like, you're not a lone wolf. I mean, you could be, but you're like, you know, you have a partner, you have friends, you have coworkers. Like, you know, how can we be resilient together? I have a strength different than your strength. Let's partner up and do something together. You know, I don't have to do it all. And it's interesting because a lot of men are like, oh, I got to do it all. I got to do it all. I got to do it all. Like, yeah, and you're going to die soon. You're going to die younger. You're not going to be able to do it for your grandkids. You're not going to be happy. You know, you're not going to be content in your life. You'll get it all done, but like, you know, maybe you don't need to. Yeah, it's great that you have the capacity to do so, but maybe you can ask for help. Maybe you can get some support, you know, and vice versa. So that's like the quick and dirty, I would say, resilience 2.0.
I think that's the vulnerable piece for men.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to be vulnerable, so it's hard for us to ask for help.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I've always been like that. It's always been hard for me to ask for help.
You know, can I speak to that real quickly?
Yeah.
Because just in terms of perspective, because we talked about perspective
earlier.
You know, one way to think about asking for help is you're also giving the other person the opportunity to do what they probably would love to do and help have greater impact on you. So if I don't ask, like, let's say you and I are buddies and I don't ask for help, I'm denying you the opportunity to show, you know, what a caring, loving friend you are. That's not fair. You know, so it's not just about me and like, oh, I got to do this all alone. Like, I'm also screwing you, possibly.
I think it's just I haven't been around the best people. It's like they're the type of people that make that saying a reality. You know, like, oh, just do it yourself. You can do it. You're capable.
Yeah. I mean, I understand. Yeah.
So I think it's just also that's just an environment play as well. You know, trying to surround yourself with people that are more supportive and that are willing and capable, and they do want to show that side to them, the more compassionate and serving side. So I guess after we rise to the challenge of life, whatever it is, how do we remove the limits we place on ourselves in face of setbacks and in face of brick walls that we just can't tear down or jump over? How do we remove these?
Well, actually, whatever the issue is, the challenge you're facing, the crucible you're working through, this is a perspective like we talked about a little earlier. Like, if you hold a perspective like this is a great opportunity, whatever is coming my way, the obstacles, whatever it is, to learn, grow, evolve, and adapt. So you look gleefully, and it sounds strange, but you look gleefully at these things coming your way, although they fucking suck, right? But like, cool, all right. And I'm reminded, I work for SealFit, and we had on the grinder, you know, when we do our physical training, you have to smile the whole time you're on the grinder because you're choosing to be there. You should be happy that you're there. And if you're not smiling, back in the day, you could get in trouble. And I love that as a concept. Like at some level, we're choosing to be here. Like you could say a spiritual level, we choose to incarnate and have this physical body. If you don't believe that, okay, most of the time we're choosing to be in this interaction. Not always. You might say, why? I would never choose to be in this situation. All right, okay. We can, metaphysics aside, let's just assume for the moment, at some deep level, you chose to be here because there's something you need to learn, or something that needs to be learned collectively unconscious, the collective unconscious, not necessarily specific to you. All right, so if you show up with that smile, that gleefulness, like that perspective, like, okay, I'm here to learn, grow, adapt, evolve, da, da, da. That changes everything. It doesn't make it easier necessarily. Like the situation could fucking suck. But then you start looking at the obstacles like, what do I need to learn about this obstacle? Well, what purpose did I bring this obstacle into my life? And what is it about my mind-body system that keeps this obstacle in place? Is there a mental construct that I've created? The way I think about things? Is the energetic and physical system of the body contracted, like we talked about earlier, that makes it hard to like actually move into the world? And the obstacle is just like a reflection of your own rigidity in the system. And if so, like, cool, let's work on the mental constructs. Let's change the physiology and the physical system. Let's make it more open and responsive, and there's more freedom. So you can choose to do things as opposed to I have to do it this particular way. That's my programming. So it's like everything is an opportunity for growth or not. And I choose to look at it like here's an opportunity for growth, even if it effing sucks. And it might not be growth that you are capable of handling on your own. Maybe you need to work with a therapist or a coach or a doctor or a Chinese medicine practitioner or a physical trainer, or talk to your spouse or your best friend, whatever, like get some support, put a team together, help you get through this. So it's not like you're the lone wolf things we talked about necessarily, but like, wow, cool. I think that's a much more interesting and fun approach to life than this sucks and I'm going to collapse and barely make it through this, whatever the situation is. And I'm going to walk this into another room because my battery's dying. So I don't want it to die when we're talking.
Okay.
Just so you know why I'm moving.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we can keep talking. I'm watching.
I guess to follow up with that, let's say we remove these limits. We're doing what we want to do, but we keep getting discouraged. What do we do, or what can we do when we get discouraged?
One of the lessons I learned in SEALFIT, and I worked at SEALFIT for a decade, and SEALFIT was founded by a retired Navy SEAL Commander Monk Devine. So I got to spend a lot of time with the SEALs, former SEALs, and other people with special operations community. And one of the big lessons I learned from them, and this teaches to this, is like, take your eyes off yourself, go help someone else. Because we would be a boat crews doing some really intense physical training in multiple different environments, evolution after evolution after evolution. And, it effing sucks. You're tired. Your mind's playing tricks on you. You're saying things that aren't there. You're exhausted. You're hungry. And you can get into this like inner loop of like, oh, this sucks. I hate this. Why the fuck am I here? Blah, blah, blah. Which is okay. That happens. And there are tools that we teach at SEALFIT to help break out of that, to change your mindset through breath practices, micro goals, things like that. And take your eyes off your own suffering and help your buddy out. And I'm not saying you have to do this every single time, and there might be other times you want to do other things, but one of the things to consider is like when you're kind of trapped in your own misery, help someone else. That can sometimes break the spell of your own misery. Not always, but it definitely was a lesson.
No.
That was interesting.
I agree, because I even told because my brother, he's trying to write a book right now, and he's been in like a depressive state lately, and just unmotivated, doesn't want to do anything, just living, surviving, but not working on his goals. And I said sometimes when you're unmotivated, at least for me, sometimes when you're unmotivated, sometimes just do it, just forcing yourself to do even just a little bit. Like, don't go in like, I have to write, like for writing a book, for example, don't go in saying like, I have to write a whole chapter today, like I gotta do this, I gotta do that. Just go in, even though you're unmotivated, and say, man, I'm just gonna write a paragraph or a sentence. And I find doing the work despite your demotivation sometimes can help spark some sort of motivation and inspiration back.
I love that. And it's like a micro goal, just a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
A little bit at a time. It builds up over time. And it goes back to like what we talked about earlier, the discipline. The difference between discipline and motivation. Like, I'm not motivated every day to do all my practices and my physical training and my martial arts. Like, no, there's sometimes like, F that, I just want to lie and do nothing. But like, no, I'm disciplined. Like, I made a commitment to myself. This is what I'm going to do every single day. So even a little bit, I love that. Even just a paragraph, can help motivate him.
It's
Hopefully.
better, and it's better than nothing.
Yeah,
I know.
completely. Yeah.
See. Well, Michael, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, man, of course. Thank you.
I'll
Appreciate your
start
time for having me.
Conclusion parts, where you
Okay.
can begin. I already picked out a bit of cards. So they work as like a combination. So share something that gets you worked up that you wish you could get closure on.
Wow, something that works me out. I wish I could flow around.
Yeah.
Damn. Something. Man, if you would have asked me last week, I gave you a different answer. That's a good one. Whoa. Something that's worked up. I wish I could have closure on. At the very beginning of this conversation, you asked about me being a marriage and family therapist, and I talked about Mori. The inability of most people to read minds, although they operate within relationships as if they can, and it's not very successful. So, and I don't want to put this on anyone else. I just put it on myself. A pet peeve I have with myself is when I do that myself in relationship with someone else, whether it's a friend or whomever, and that I ruminate, I imagine I know what they mean, what the behavior means, what they said it means, and then I ruminate about that. And eventually, like, could be hours or days or maybe weeks later, I have a conversation with them, and I ask blah 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 blah, and then they clarify. I'm like, holy crap! I was over here in this whole other world that I created that had nothing to do with reality, and you were over here. And how easy it would have been if I would just sort of ask you at the very beginning, like, what did you mean by that? Or I noticed this behavior, or I'd call it out, like, what's that mean for you? Or what do you mean when you said X, Y, and Z? Or is there a reason you didn't say anything? Whatever. Everything is different. That would have been, that retrospectively, historically in my life, would have solved so many problems and kept, lots, reduced pain and suffering in relationships. And I actually made a commitment to myself recently. I love the question, that I'm not going to do that anymore. Like, if something arises, and maybe you can't do it immediately, because there's a situation going on, but like within hours or within days, I'm going to address whatever it is, as opposed to spend weeks ruminating about it and finding out that I was creating a whole effing world that has nothing to do with reality. So I would say that hopefully answers your question.
No, I think that's a big one, because often for me in relationships and arguments, it's always about trying to be right. Who's right? Well, I'm right, or no, you're right, or who's right? And then you go into this battle of having the last word, like, oh. But really, it's just about trying to understand each other's perspectives, and not really about who's right, but just understanding your side and each other's side. I like that.
It's to make that my second one.
Well, my final questions.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
First question: what is your biggest regret?
So my biggest regret is not serving in the military.
Oh, rearing.
Yeah, there was 3 attempts of me going in, and I don't necessarily go into the story of those things. Didn't work out each and every time, and I regret that, because I've always wanted, since I was a little kid, I always wanted to serve.
I was in the Navy. Yeah, I was in the Navy for 8 years. Went on 1 deployment, been out to sea for longer than a year. So yeah, I've seen a lot of blue ocean.
Where were you stationed? Where would you?
I was stationed in San Diego for 8 years.
Oh, nice. So
I
that
miss
is
San
where
Diego.
you? Okay.
It's like the coastal Boston.
Yeah, I
but
saw.
better.
Yeah, Philfit was located in Encinitas.
So
Okay.
I went to San Diego 4 times a year for a decade. Yeah, San Diego's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm thinking about moving back.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Maybe.
Maybe.
We'll
Okay.
see. It's more of like a political thing for me.
In terms of like the rules, regulations, laws,
Yeah, I like
tax
Texas
structure.
better.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
My second question is, who or what made the biggest impact in your life so far?
Wow. Or what? You know, I would say our parents, both good and bad. You know, and not to get into all the details of it, but like uh, the situations our family found ourselves in were in many cases very challenging. But I want to give my parents really a lot of credit for helping me get the help I needed in both education wise and psychological wise and health wise. There's various things I went through when I was a kid to support me through all that stuff. And retrospectively, yeah, it could have been differently. It could have been better. Yeah, we could armchair quarterback the whole time. But the fact that they cared enough about me is the reason I'm doing what I do today. Because I could imagine, because I have friends who didn't have the same kind of support that I did as a kid, and they got into drugs and all kinds of stuff. And I was fortunate; I never did. I never got into gangs, drugs, and crime, or nothing like that. So I would say thank you to my parents for parenting as best as they could.
Which most adults take for granted, especially the adults I think that don't have children. I think they don't have a real perspective of appreciating their parents as a parent. So I think that's a very unique perspective that happens. That's a perspective shift that happens once you have kids of your own.
Interesting.
The appreciation
Of your parents.
of your parents. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. You'll appreciate this. I'm a podcaster too, and I've been podcasting
Yeah.
since 2008, a long time.
Hello.
Yeah, I took last year off because I've been nomadic and traveling, but my father listens to my podcasts. And then we get on the phone or a Zoom or when I see him in person and we debrief, and I love it because he'll say, "Man, if I would have known what the conversation was about when I was younger and parenting you, I would have done things differently. Or if I would have known that, I would have engaged your mother differently. If I would have known that, I've done my health things differently." And I love the fact that he's open, he listens, we engage in the conversation.
He's learning more.
Yeah, he's learning. Yeah. He's 88, but it's awesome.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's so cool.
See, even it doesn't matter how old you are. He's 88 and he's still learning more about his son.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
Yep. Isn't that cool?
Till the day you die.
Yeah.
My next question is, what is one lesson you had to learn the hard way?
That my choices in many cases of women in my life are a full reflection of my own immaturity and my own wounding. And it's not a bad reflection on the women, but the women I chose affirmed how I felt about myself in a not a nice way. Like, it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's a lifelong lesson. And it's one that I've been working on for a long time. Like, how do I grow and mature as a man, as a human being? And in partnerships, I show up with everything we just talked about, more resilient, more loving, more caring, compassion, but also really strong and clear and front side focused and stuff like that. So for me, it's like, that was a hard lesson. And I'm still learning. I'm still alive. So learning, that's my perspective. I'll hopefully always be learning lessons. But I would say that it's like, man, how do I show up more authentically, fully as who I really am, with all the character traits that are important to me in a relationship?
I think that's a big one. That's a lesson I had to learn as well, because sometimes we're often distracted by, I think for men, we're distracted by lust and curves, and we like, oh, we're satisfied in bed, so the red flags don't matter. They don't matter.
Yeah. And that's really this. So I have a coach I'm working with. We literally had this conversation like 3 nights ago, and we're talking about red flags and green flags. And like, you know, my hope for myself is I see the red flags more quickly and act on them and search for, I'm heterosexual, so female partners who are a lot of green flags. You know? Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes it just takes time, you know. Um, for me, I look for values. You obviously have to have some sort of sexual attraction, um, but values is the biggest one. Values and some similar interest. I think when you have some similar interests, you don't have to have everything the same, and then also have the same values and maybe the same like faith, spirituality belief. I think that will make any relationship last. Yeah, because even if you have, let's say, setbacks or arguments or whatever, you have, and you share the same faith system or belief system, you have that to fall back on to help guide you to bring you back together.
Right. So a friend of mine called it 2 as 1. Like it's you two against the problem. But this kid thought that it's 3 as 1. It's you two and God if you're monotheist.
Yeah, whatever your faith.
Whatever your thing is, like you have it behind you, support you as a couple facing the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
So that's what I look for.
Okay, cool.
And when you face red flags, yeah, you have to be, as men, if any men are listening to this, I think you just have to show up as who you are from the get-go. Don't try to like pretend to be someone you're not, just if you're weird and awkward,
That's funny.
just be weird and just be yourself, because then you're putting on a mask, and then you can't hold on to that mask for your entire life, like if you're looking for a life partner.
Right.
So
yeah, and I think you nailed it, because eventually you can't hold the facade,
yeah,
and then she's going to see or he's going to see who you really are,
yeah.
and you've been living like in this unreality, and then the reality shows up, and like, oh wait, who the hell are you? Like aspects of self. I'm sure there's aspects of self that also show up fully in reality, but there's also parts of ourselves that we hide from the other person. Why? Because we hide them from ourselves too, Yeah.
So you got to embrace that.
Embrace it all.
But my next question is, what would you do, or what would you experience in life if you had all the time and all the money in the world?
All right. So that's awesome, man. All right. So if I was independently wealthy, I would still do what I do now. So I love coaching. I love teaching. I love my groups and my individuals, my couples. I'll still all do that. But I obviously wouldn't need to. But on top of that, there's 3 other things I would do. So one is like, I love to learn. So I'm always taking classes or attending conferences or workshops or whatever. And if I was like independently wealthy, instead of going to the guy's workshop, I would just have to fly him to me. It's like, or the gal, like, okay, one-on-one for the next 24, 48, 3 days, whatever. Fill me with all your knowledge, whatever it is. Like, and there's David Goggins, he's How to Living with a SEAL, like that whole book. He moved in with a dude and trained for like a month. I would do tons of that. Like, oh, I want to learn this, fly the guy in and put the gal in and train you up or educate me or learn. That's one thing. And the other 2 things, one is I'm very interested in religion and spirituality, and I'd love to travel the world visiting different religious and spiritual sites. And I don't mean just like Jerusalem for the Jews, Christians, and Muslims, but like, shamanic places and Buddhist places and Taoist places in Asia, or places in Africa that are need for Stonehenge, like various things that are of interest to you that have a spiritual meaning to the particular groups of people there. The pyramids, all those things would be of interest to me to go. And then the other last one is the warrior traditions. I trained in the martial arts for 40 some years now. And so like, I'd love to go to Mongolia and train with them. I'd love to go to Japan and train in ninjutsu, not the teenage ninjutsu, the real ninjutsu. Shaolin in China, those kind of things, and Krav Maga in Israel. Boom, 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 like really go in and really live in the spaces where these traditions emerged and train fully. I love to do that too.
Yeah, like
And I can
immersed.
Emergent. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I love that. I think that would be super fun to just do, because you're learning about the cultures, you're learning about the history and our ancestors and how we just live life.
Exactly. And then suck up that knowledge, that wisdom, and that hopefully can help inform how I help my clients, thrive in their lives. So yeah,
That's awesome.
thanks, man.
Well, Michael, I asked every guest this last question. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience to resonate with them?
The word that comes to mind is kindness. I have a friend of mine, Chris. So he breaks to be a great guest. He's a former Navy SEAL. He runs something called Trident Mindset. It's the mindset program. And every day he makes 5 people smile. And he is the funniest dude. So it's really easy. Like he's just so sociable and fun and light. It's easy for him to make people smile. But I love that because you just never know. Any one of those 5 people might be having the worst effing day. And for a moment, someone cares enough to help them smile and make them feel good. And I've heard stories of things like, not necessarily with Chris and individual, but I've heard stories like that where someone they're literally going to commit suicide. So they're on their way to go commit suicides, and someone does something kind or fun for them, or just shows them some humanity, and it shifts something in them, and they don't fall through on. So you just don't know what kind of effect you could have by having to help someone smile, or help them carry their groceries across the street, or, help them look something up online, whenever it is that you can just do. It takes a few minutes. Kindness costs nothing. Be kind.
I love that, man. I could add to it, but I won't.
Oh, go ahead.
You want me to add?
Yeah, please.
I was just going to say, even when you feel like you don't have a lot to give or to do, kindness only takes a fleeting moment. Don't feel like even if you're in a rush, maybe somewhere, don't feel like, unless it's a very important appointment or meeting or something, don't always feel like you're in a rush, and don't feel like you don't have time to give that kindness. Because I think that's something that's stopping people, is they don't feel like they have enough time to do anything. Why am I even going to take an extra minute, literally a minute, to be kind to somebody? But I think that karma, that energy, whatever, can give back to yourself tenfold. And even for me, there's a lot of homeless in Austin, and I don't carry cash, but sometimes I have just spare change that I'll just hand them to them, So I love that, man. Any small act of kindness. Don't feel like you don't have time to give a minute of kindness. That's it.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, I appreciate the interview.
Man.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jack.
And as always, everybody, stay curious. Don't give up. Peace.